to scrap their COVID vaccine plans for nightclubs in England. Labour have suggested they'll vote against it, saying it's too expensive and people should be tested instead. It's thought a number of Conservatives will oppose the measure. The Lib Dems have already said they will reject it. The EU is rejecting demands from the UK to renegotiate a crucial part of the Brexit deal that dictates how trade is done with Northern Ireland. But Brexit Minister Lord Frost says we cannot go on as we are. In the city, the FTSE 100 is closed up 117 points at 69.98. The pound buys $1.36 and €1.16. And the weather, another very warm and uncomfortable night over much of the UK. Cloud in the far north will spread back across eastern Scotland and into northeast England. A low of 11 in Scotland, but closer to 20 further south. From Global's newsroom, I'm Tim Humphrey.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, and a very good evening to you. It's 8 o'clock on LBC. Welcome to Cross Question, LBC's thrice weekly political panel debate show. Let me tell you who's on our panel tonight. Anna Soubry is former Conservative MP, former Change UK MP. Oz Katerji is a journalist, and Albie Amankona is the founder of Conservatives Against Racism for Equality. Barry Gardiner is Labour MP for Brent North. Those of you who are watching us on Global Player on the website will notice that he's not quite arrived in the studio yet, because he went to the wrong studio. But he's in a cab. He will be here very, very shortly. Anna and Oz are finding that incredibly funny. That Oz went to the right studio, so we'll let him go first on the first question, I think. Now, 0345 6060 973 if you would like to ask our panel a question. And also, you can watch us on Global Player on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, on the YouTube channel, Facebook or Twitter feeds.
0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Right, let's go to our first question. It's a text question from Shirley in Northampton. She asks, is a 3% pay rise fair for the NHS? I suspect that's a question you all thought would come up. Well, you are right. Oz, let's come to you first then.
Oh, see, I texted my sister, who is an NHS nurse, how she felt about the pay rise, but she hasn't got back to me. So I was going to come armed with that, piece of information there. I mean, look, I think the NHS... on average, I think wages have stagnated over a long period of time. So I think, it's not just nurses in the public sector that need a pay rise. Is 3% enough? I don't know if anyone offered you a 3% pay rise, would you be like over the moon about it? Especially if you were, frontline staff during a once in several generations health crisis. It's just sort of, I don't know. I mean, 3% is good. It's good that nurses are finally getting a pay rise. Everyone should be happy with that. But I can understand the unions and nurses themselves might want, something a bit more than that, and especially considering the conditions that they're working in at the moment.
I suppose everyone would say, look, nobody would deny, and let's remember, it's not just nurses either. This is right across the NHS. Dentists, GPs, ancillary workers, cleaners, I think they're all going to get the same pay rise. And I think I was talking to someone from Unison earlier, and she was saying they wanted a £2,000 rise for everybody, which would have obviously benefited the lower paid most. So nobody would begrudge someone a pay rise, but it is above inflation. And isn't that the key thing here, which most public sector workers, we've heard today, the police are getting it way below inflation. On that basis, maybe 3% will be seen as a reasonable rise, Oz.
Well, I mean, inflation starting from when? When are we talking about here? How far back do you want to go on the timeline? Wages haven't... When I was a teenager going into uni, wages haven't grown since then, right? So the idea that it's slightly above inflation, like, come on, guys. If there's one thing in this country that we should be paying a lot more for, right? It's healthcare. So it's one of those things where it costs however much it costs, and we can't be talking about staff shortages and we're going to train all these British doctors and British nurses to come in, but pay them properly for a start, pay them a living decent wage, and then we can talk about why there's staffing problems for the service.
Anna Soubry, this was a recommendation from a pay body. Surely governments generally, if they accept what the pay body says, everyone is generally very happy. This doesn't seem to have generated much happiness today.
Well, look, Ian, it's not going to, is it? Because we all know what the situation is in the NHS. It's been through this dreadful crisis because of COVID. And there's a feeling that, and I was part of a government that imposed that real reduction, actually, in the wages of a lot of public sector workers, not at the bottom, but certainly above the bottom. And I think if we're going to be really, which we should be, honest about where we are with the NHS as we come out of the COVID crisis, there is going to be a problem with retention. Part of that problem is going to be that we're not paying people enough money, and especially at the bottom part of the NHS. And I speak with, I think it seems to be like half my family work in the NHS and have done for about 4 generations, and none of them have been in very high-paid jobs, I might add. But you look at the work of the paramedics, the outstanding contribution that they have made in the crisis, nurses, doctors. But that also includes the people who've kept the hospitals clean, who've kept the canteens open for the staff, so on and so forth. And as I say, I think the real two questions really. One, where is inflation going to go? And secondly, we are going to have a big problem with retention.
Your first job in government was as public health minister, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you have sympathy for health ministers in this? Where, if they'd offered 5%, do we think that the reaction would be any different? I mean, obviously the unions were asking for 15%. That was never going to happen.
No, it was never going to happen. 5 feels a little bit more comfortably. Seems a little fairer, doesn't it? But the government 3 is better than what the government originally said. So we will wait and see what the reaction in the broader populace is going to be to it. I think Barry's just arrived.
Hey, Barry has arrived. He's got a can of something in his hand. It says Barry Gardiner on the front of it. I don't know what that... Well, anyway, we'll find out what that is in just a minute.
Your other office.
We'll let you settle down first, Barry, before I come to you. The question from Shirley in Northampton is a 3% pay rise fair for the NHS? Albie, what's your view?
So I think it's a very difficult situation because obviously over the past year and a half we've seen probably some of the worst conditions that the NHS has had to work under, but also some of the biggest tests on the fiscal constraints of the country that we've ever seen. I think definitely in my lifetime, probably in your lifetime, and probably in your lifetime as well, Barry. And I think what the government were initially...
Because we're ancient.
Well, or maybe I'm just young. But initially, I think the government was proposing a 1% pay rise, which is obviously quite low. That's tripled to 3%. Yes, it could be 5%, but I would add that in Scotland, where the SNP are in power, I think they're proposing a minimum of 4%. So we're not actually that far away from social democratic parties on this as well. Yes, I think we'd love for it to be more, but ultimately, we can't just shake the magic money tree all of the time. We've already spent billions, hundreds of billions of pounds on furlough, hundreds of billions of pounds on business support, hundreds of billions of pounds on support for the NHS. And there is going to be a reckoning after the pandemic when it comes to how are we going to bring public spending back under control. But I do understand those in the NHS who might feel aggrieved by the 3% pay rise. It's a tricky situation the government are in.
Barry Gardiner, 3% is possibly more than you were expecting the government to offer. I imagine you're going to say it's not enough. Well, if 3% isn't enough, what should be offered?
Look, what I found really upsetting was this afternoon when there was the statement in the House. The Minister didn't give a figure and she pushed it into the long grass. So the announcement will come out, presumably, in the middle of summer when
I thought the announcement had come out today.
No, she didn't actually make an announcement in the House today. She delayed it and said that it wouldn't... she gave no figure to the House of Commons, so there was no ability for MPs to scrutinise the basis on what they were doing. And I just, I think doing this on the penultimate day that Parliament is meeting, and then saying everybody was expecting her to come out with the actual figure. What we know is that they're going to make the government's response to the review. We know what the review says, but the government's response to the review presumably will come out in the middle of the summer when nobody's around to actually talk about it and discuss it and scrutinise it.
So, I mean, there was a press release that has been put out today. So, I mean, this is an official announcement, is it not?
Well, it was not made in the House of Commons because I was there. I actually asked the minister, and I said, "Look, does she believe that?"
Well, I've got the press release here. It's come from the Department of Health.
At what time?
At 5:53 p.m., which says Government accepts recommendation of NHS independent pay review body in full for this year. 3% pay rise for NHS staff, including nurses, paramedics, consultants, dentists and salaried GPs. But you're right. I mean, I was watching her statement. Helen Whately, the Minister of State, she was making a statement in the Commons. Why on earth wouldn't she announce this?
Well, look... maybe the question I posed to her had, got them feeling guilty. I don't know.
Well, Anna Soubry, what do you put this down to? Because on the face of it, it's
ground incompetence and deceit. I'm sorry, it's outrageous.
Cock-up or conspiracy?
It'll be everything. I'm not exaggerating. It will be both. It will be grand cock-up and conspiracy. To keep Parliament out of it, to keep the noise down. This is the most incompetent and fundamentally dishonest government that our country has ever had the misfortune to govern us. They are shockers. And Barry, I'm surprised he's not more angry. He should be.
Anna, he's building himself up.
Can I tell you, I am angry. I had no idea they had then, after a statement by a minister in the House, then issued a press release, which of course should have been what the minister was telling MPs. So it is outrageous. And unfortunately, I think, you were right the second time. I don't think it's cock-up. I do think it's conspiracy.
Yes,
I don't think they want parliamentary scrutiny.
But you see, this is weird, isn't it? Because
that's true.
Governments don't always accept the findings of independent pay bodies, do they? And then there's always a great argument about this is outrageous. What's the point of having an independent pay body if you don't accept its recommendations? They have accepted the recommendations. So they ought to be saying, well, this is a good news story for everybody. But instead, we're having a totally different discussion now.
And that's the level of incompetence that Anna's talking about. So, had they actually thought this through, Iain, you're absolutely right. What they would have done is they'd have said, OK, if we're minded to accept this, let's do it. Let's announce it in Parliament when it can face scrutiny by MPs. What can MPs say? They can say, good, you've actually given the NHS what the pay review suggested, and you've got backup. But they didn't. And as a result of that, they now look as if they don't know their arse from their elbow quite.
So, Barry, just out of interest, if it had been announced in the House, what would have been your feedback to the government? And if you don't like the 3% pay rise, what's Labour's plan for healthcare cost increases for wages? How high would it be?
I'm sure that both you and I would say that people who have been on the front line in the NHS are worth 30%, never mind 3%. But I accept the arguments that you made earlier, that a pay review body has to look at this, they have to assess in the round what is possible and feasible, and they have come out with a figure. And therefore, it is reasonable, not generous, but reasonable for the government then to stick to that figure.
And would you do that? I mean, because I think some of your colleagues have been saying, no, this is far too low, it needs to be far higher. But we don't seem to be getting a percentage, because if the Labour Party is saying 3% is wrong, I think surely an opposition party then has to say what they think the right figure should be.
Sure, and no doubt the front bench of the Labour Party will.
But you seem to be saying that you think 3% is reasonable.
What I said is, if it were my money, I would give them anything they wanted. because they have been unbelievable in what they've done, right? Well, actually, Iain, they've put their lives on the line. They've put their lives on the line.
I think we can all agree, all five of us can agree, that people who particularly work on the front line of the NHS do deserve as much as can be afforded.
Yeah.
But my question to you remains is, what should that be?
Well, that's what I've said. I've said I think it's reasonable, given it's an independent pay review body, it is reasonable to award what they have suggested. I haven't read the pay review body's report, and I will be very interested to read the government's press release.
It's even got a quote from the minister who was making the statement.
No.
Yeah.
This is scandalous.
Would you like me to read it to you? It says, this is from the Minister for Care, Helen Whately, "I'm determined to make the NHS the best place to work for all our staff, and we continue to invest in recruitment and retention with over 45,300 more staff in the NHS now compared to a year ago, including 9,000 more nurses and over 4,000 more doctors. Our NHS staff have worked incredibly hard to fight the pandemic for over 18 months, and I'm glad to confirm we're accepting the pay review body's recommendations in full this year, so staff in their remit will receive a 3% pay rise." So there we go.
Well, it's always
Also,
nice to come on your programme and find out what's going on in Parliament.
Everything here.
I just want to say,
have you had the text?
My sister has texted me.
Right.
She said,
Drum roll.
"I've just finished a 12-hour shift. It feels better than a kick in the teeth, but only marginally." So that's my sister for you.
I won't call that a ringing endorsement.
I mean, look. The NHS staff have been through absolute hell over the last few years, and as Anna said correctly, what's happened over the last few years is essentially a pay decrease for everyone. Yeah, 3%. Great. It's free publicity for the Tories as well. I mean, who in the country is going to be like, boo, no more pay for nurses and doctors? I mean, yeah, it's just.
On that basis, you might have thought they would have made a bit more.
Exactly
of it this
right. Yeah,
in
but this is a government that's absolutely terrified of accountability. They have the largest, majority in since Blair, and they are absolutely petrified of just scrutiny, basic scrutiny, and that's the job of a parliament. We have a parliamentary democracy to ensure things like this, and they are terrified of it, running scared like headless chickens.
We try to do a bit of scrutiny on this programme. I don't always succeed, but there we go. Thank you very much indeed for all of your comments there. We'll come to more of your questions in a moment. 0345 6060 973. It's 17 minutes past 8.
LBC.
Thank you.
State on LBC. You're listening to Cross Question. Let me introduce our full panel now. Barry Gardiner is Labour MP for Brent North. Anna Soubry, former Conservative Party MP and Change UK MP. Oz Katerji is journalist. And Albie Amankona is founder of Conservatives Against Racism for Equality. You've had quite a busy few weeks, haven't you? I've seen you on every single TV program. In fact, I've appeared on a couple with you. What's it been like being in this sort of maelstrom?
Do you know, I've actually really enjoyed it. I've been on a lot of shows that I watch every day, like Politics Live, and I loved my shout-out in your For the Many podcast over the weekend, even though you did get my surname wrong.
I did, didn't I? I do apologise.
Can you pronounce it now?
Amankona.
There we go, perfect. So no, I mean, I've been really enjoying it and talking about an issue that I'm really passionate about. And it's an issue which not many Conservatives do speak out about publicly, especially not ethnic minority Conservatives, and I hope more follow in the work of what Siobhan and I have done. And I'm very grateful for Steve Baker for all of the work that he's done to get us to where we are. OK, let's go to our next caller. It's Brenda in St Ives in Cambridgeshire, as opposed to Cornwall. Brenda, very good evening to you. What would you like to ask?
Good evening, Ian. Good evening, panel. I'd like to ask the panel, can they possibly give me any glimmer of optimism as to way in this nation, the way we move forward with the government that has decimated the fishing industry, now got these massive problems with Northern Ireland, and a Prime Minister that does U-turns on everything that he says, and I'm really, really quite concerned.
I don't know why, but I'm drawn to come to you, Anna Soubry, on this one.
Well, I think there are many people, frankly, and I think there are millions of people who are looking at what is going on in absolute despair. And, I mean, where do you start? So we've got Brexit reality now unfurling. We've got this outrageous situation whereby the oven-ready deal has a part of it which Boris Johnson and his minister, Lord Frost, don't like, the Northern Ireland Protocol. And so they're seeking to renege on an international treaty and go and renegotiate it, even though they said it was absolutely marvellous. And
that happens all the time.
I mean, no, it doesn't. Give me an example of when it happens.
International treaties can be renegotiated. They often are.
Yes.
And it's not right to say they're reneging on it. They're saying to the EU,
yes,
look, this isn't working. We want to try and find a way to make it work. What's wrong with that? Because
it is the profound dishonesty of having settled that treaty only back in December, telling the country that it was oven ready, telling the country it was a great deal, getting elected on that basis. And remember this, Ian, because a lot of people are forgetting it. The Northern Ireland Protocol is supported by the overwhelming majority of members of the Northern Ireland Assembly. They support it. And in fact, the majority of members of Parliament who were elected from Northern Ireland to the UK Parliament, Sinn Féin don't take up their seats. That's why what you see sitting there is not necessarily the actual reflection of the vote. So the protocol is supported by the people of Northern Ireland. And what Frost and Johnson are seeking to do is renege on it. We've heard all the mutterings and we've heard all the threats. And the EU's made it very clear that they will not renegotiate it. Now, I'm not saying that it can't be tweaked here and tweaked there, but a lot of that tweaking comes from the British government. Stop being so silly about things which they shouldn't be concerned about, like agreeing on veterinary procedures and so on. Instead, you've got Frost standing up in the House of Lords today saying, we don't want the European courts having anything to do with this treaty. They've already agreed all that. And I think it is one of the most shameful episodes of what is happening in our country. So you've got Brexit reality, and also then you have a Prime Minister that does U-turns, and basically he tells lies, and he lies as easily as he takes breath. And we are in a very sorry state. And until Barry's lot, the Labour Party, step up and become an effective opposition, I despair. And I think there are millions of us who feel politically homeless and share that despair.
Those are some quite tough words from somebody who was a very forthright Conservative MP. Albie, where do you stand on this?
Yes, absolutely. I would just first say that the sound has actually gone from my headphones, so I didn't hear everything that Anna has just said. However, Look, the Northern Ireland protocol situation is something which desperately needs to be solved. I am uncomfortable with renegotiating an international agreement which we only agreed very recently. However, there are clearly failings in the way that the agreement has been implemented, and we've seen some disturbances in Northern Ireland. But I think, if I remember correctly, if Theresa May's deal had passed through Parliament, none of this would be happening. And if I understand correctly, both Anna and Barry voted against Theresa May's deal.
No, that's not
right. From where I see it, Theresa May's deal failing through Parliament is what has led to Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister. So my question to both Anna and Barry is, do you feel any responsibility for where we are now?
All right, Anna, let's come back to you on that.
Can I? Sorry, you're coming to me. Sorry, my internet's not terribly good this evening. Can I? No. Theresa May's deal, actually, she didn't get a deal. She got broad terms, and then she had, remember, the Northern Ireland backstop, there was real concern about that, because it's actually a problem which can only be solved if Northern Ireland remains as it is, effectively, remember, the customs union and the single market. And you have to move the border somewhere else. And that's what's happened. And that's what's upsetting the DUP. And so to say, Theresa May's deal, actually, there's not very much difference between what Boris Johnson finally negotiated and what Theresa May had got broad agreement on. And if she hadn't got the final details of it, we were going to fall back on a customs union. But it's not true to say that Theresa May's deal was any different in substance to Boris Johnson's. The problem would have been exactly the same. It's just that she wouldn't be pandering to the DUP. She'd be backing that protocol.
Well, she gave him £1 billion.
Oh, I know, but that was because she lost the 2017 election.
Yeah, I know. That's a good bit of pandering, though.
No, but at this moment on the protocol, having agreed it, having told Parliament it was brilliant, now Johnson is saying it's rubbish. To at least give her credit, Theresa May wouldn't have behaved like that.
Okay.
Barry's
Barry
problem
Gardiner.
is that his party went and voted for this deal. But anyway, that's another matter.
Barry.
Look, in January, the Secretary of State said there is no Irish sea border, and the important preparations we've taken to prepare for the end of the transition period are keeping goods flowing.
Well, that's 50% right, isn't it? Because they are flowing quite well from Northern Ireland to GB, but it's just the other way that's the problem.
Indeed, and it was always the other way that was going to be the problem, and that is because the other part of his statement is completely false, that there is no Irish sea border. And of course, it was that promise that Boris made to the DUP when he said that he absolutely guaranteed that there would be no border down the Irish Sea, no checks, it was always false because it was clear, and the EU made it clear, that we would be treated as a third party, and that was the deal. Now, I want to go back to what the questioner said, because she was right. Farmers, fishermen, business groups, trade experts, 5 parties in the Northern Irish Assembly, the Irish government, the United States government, have all supported a veterinary agreement to lower barriers down the Irish Sea and its equivalence, veterinary alignment, that would be able to do that. This would be a way of trying to get through this problem. But the government absolutely, as we heard in the House of Lords this afternoon, are digging their heels in. They're not prepared to do it. And as for what was said when I was the Shadow Secretary for Trade, I was very clear that this was always going to be a problem. Absolutely. And that's why we had all those arguments about, was it a customs union or the customs union, or was there a new customs union that we could negotiate? Because you can't have part of the UK in 2 separate customs unions without there being checks somewhere. And that's what we've ended up with. But it was, and here Anna is right, it was the lies that were told by Boris Johnson to the DUP that got us into this mess.
I used to pick people up for calling Boris Johnson a liar. I don't do that anymore. Oz Katerji, I'm going to ask you to be
Says a
relatively
lot.
brief because I see that you're nodding to a lot of what Anna and Barry are saying, and I want to fit in as many questions as I can. So if you can be a little brief.
I'll be as brief as possible without having to broaden into the whole Northern Ireland issue in its nuanced detail. But Boris Johnson sold ideological cakeism to the people. He told people that he could have his cake and he could eat it too. And he hoped that when people turned up looking for the slice that he'd promised them, that they weren't too disappointed to find out that he'd already eaten it all. Right? That is who the man is. Say he's a liar. He was fired for lying during his... Imagine a journalist fired for lying. That should haunt you for the rest of your career. For him, he just slicks it off like nothing happened at all. And look, the idea of lies in politics are fundamentally dangerous to liberal democracy. If you start promising people you can provide them things which you can't, and then you turn around and don't provide it to them, that's where the problems come in. And I tell you what, I know a lot of Tories who are privately furious at what's going on, right? And who's standing up to this? Who's standing up to this government that is scared of its own backbenchers? It's scared of the opposition. It's scared of virtually everyone except for a few friends in the media who try and keep the wheels churning along for this government on its popularity. We're reaching the end of the runway for how long Boris Johnson can keep going on with lie after lie after lie before it ends up catching him. So, just sit back and watch. We've got a few years left to go of this government. I don't think Boris Johnson's going to survive another election. I don't think so. Do you?
Well, given the electoral arithmetic at the moment, I wouldn't rule it out. And given the performance of the opposition, I wouldn't rule it out.
It's a long way to go. And as I said,
it is.
Boris Johnson has built his castle on absolute sand here. And sooner or later, it's going to give way beneath him. And I hope it does.
Brenda, I think we got the gist of what your thoughts from your question. Thank you very much. Paul in Bedford says, Iain, you telling Albie that he's all over the TV is like the pot calling the kettle black. You're on the radio, GMB, Jeremy Vine, etc., etc. Then when I go for a walk to get away from you, your face is on the side of a bus. Well, at least it doesn't look... Well, maybe it does look like one. Be on Good Morning Britain at 6:30 tomorrow morning. It's 8:32. Tim Humphrey has the news headlines.
Unions say they're unhappy with a 3% pay rise announced for NHS staff in England and Wales. Some say the increase should be 5 times that much to make up for years of austerity following the credit crunch in 2008. Most teachers and police officers will see their pay frozen. Boris Johnson has apologised to businesses and organisations affected by the so-called pingdemic. He took part in Prime Minister's questions while isolating. Labour's Sir Keir Starmer is also now quarantining after one of his children tested positive for coronavirus. Disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein has pleaded not guilty to 11 charges of sexual assault relating to 5 women in Los Angeles. He's already serving a 23-year prison sentence in New York since being convicted of rape last year. And the weather, another very warm and uncomfortable night over much of the UK. Cloud in the far north will spread back across eastern Scotland and into northeast England. A low of 11 Celsius in Scotland and closer to 20 further south.
LBC
6 on LBC. You're listening to Cross Question. Barry Gardiner is here, Labour MP for Brent North. Anna Soubry, former Conservative and Change UK MP. Katerji, journalist. And Albie Amankona, founder of Conservatives Against Racism for Equality. Let's go to our next caller. Pin your ears back. It's Sean in concert. Hello, Sean.
Happy belated birthday for you last week, mate. Right.
You're very kind.
This is a very, very serious question, right? Why on earth are you breaking up for 6 weeks when the country's in such a state? The NHS cannot break up, right? Yous are on £89,000 a year, right? You need to catch yourselves on having a 6-week break when this country's in this state.
And that's Sean being moderate. Barry Gardiner, you are the only sitting MP on the panel, so I'm afraid I'm going to come to you first on this. I think Sean's figures are slightly wrong. They're 81,000. It's not 89,000. But a lot of people will think...
It's still a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
Still a lot of money.
A lot of people will think, well, there is so much going on in the world. Should Parliament be breaking for 6 weeks?
Yeah. Look, Sean, the first thing I'd say to you is that we're not going on holiday. Part of what an MP...
Not at all?
Part of what an MP does is in the House of Commons, but a lot of what we do is in our constituencies. It's visiting businesses, it's working with local groups, it's dealing with constituents' problems, whether that's with the local hospital, with their employment or whatever. And I can tell you this, that my emails don't stop because Parliament has gone into recess. So that's the first thing to try and reassure you of. We're not going away. I'll take a holiday, sure. Yeah, I'll take a holiday. I'm going down to Pembrokeshire for a week this summer, and I look forward to it. But let me reassure you that it's not 6 weeks and we'll not see anything of work until September again. No, there's a lot of work to do. Now, you're right that sometimes things happen where Parliament needs to come back because there needs to be scrutiny of what the government is doing. But you've been listening to the show and you know how this government avoids scrutiny as much as it possibly can. But that's why I will continue to be campaigning and working throughout the summer, not just in my constituency, but on all the issues, the national issues and the international ones that are important. And, you know, being part of programmes like this is a way of getting the message out. It's also a way of campaigning. And that's what MPs are supposed to do. It's about working with the public on the issues that the public cares about and trying to make sure that the government gets into the right place and puts the policies in place to deliver what people want.
Katerji, do you think that sometimes the media feeds this narrative that MPs just go away for 3 months and don't do anything and they're just on holiday having a lovely time? Whereas what Barry says, and I mean, I know this from MPs that I know, generally, yeah, they're all going to take a holiday. Why shouldn't MPs have a holiday just like anybody else? They need to recharge their batteries. They are, after all, helping to run the country. Do you think that we're sometimes unfair?
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as I'm concerned, our MPs should be well paid. They should be well rested. They should be, given all the facilities they need to carry out the job they have. The problem I have is when politicians lie, cheat, put forward policies that destroy people's lives, and sell the public, a pack of lies, hoping that they can hold on to their jobs for a little longer. If they want to take a 6-week holiday, they can take a full 6-week holiday as far as I'm concerned. Doesn't bother me at all. I have a problem with the way this government is trying to avoid scrutiny, avoid accountability, and take a 7-week holiday for all I care, but come back and sort it out,
You did say on your Twitter feed, I have a lot to say tonight.
Yeah,
You're doing well so far. Anna Soubry.
No, it's absolutely the case that you go back to your constituency, you work. I do have still, may find this difficult to believe in, but a number of friends in the Conservative Party, obviously friends in the Labour backbenchers and the front bench as well. So I know that this has actually been a really tough 15 months for lots of MPs, actually. It's one of the reasons why money was made available for them to take on an extra member of staff. even though actually they hadn't asked for it. But I know that the amount of cases that every MP has had has been quite extraordinary. And so I can assure you, Sean, that they will not be just lounging around for the next 6 weeks. Yes, they're entitled to a holiday. Most will take 1 or 2 weeks, but then they'll be working really hard for their constituents in their constituency, and that's good.
And in a shock horror announcement, I am going to be taking 2 weeks off in August as well. But we have some brilliant replacements lined up for me. But more of that another point. Albie, do you have sympathy with MPs here? Do you think they get a raw press on holidays?
Yeah, I think I do definitely have sympathy with them. Everyone deserves a holiday, but as to why they seem to get so many recesses, I think I remember reading somewhere that back in the day when the Thames was very smelly and full of sewage, the MPs went on summer recess because it was too smelly for them to sit in the Houses of Parliament. And so it's a hangover from history, really. And I mean, we look at the summer holidays at schools, another hangover from history, that the reason why they're so long is because, of course, children would go home and help with their parents with work and on farms. So I think maybe parliamentary holidays aren't the only holidays that need reforming. I think my school self, recess, time away from Westminster, maybe it needs to be reformed. Obviously, these questions probably come up every year, and I think maybe judging an MP's recess away from Westminster on when the river used to be really smelly is not something we should be continuing in the 21st century.
Well, the Liberal Democrat MP that I stood against, Norman Lamb, back in 2005, he used to spend 2 weeks every summer going around to every single village, and he would literally sit on the village green, and constituents could then come to it. I mean, it'd be an hour in each one, and there were 85 different parishes in that constituency. So, I mean, and he did that every single year, and that is not unusual for MPs to do that sort of thing. But they do get a rough deal, even though, Sean, I suspect you're going to disagree.
I'm absolutely fuming, mate, when they turn and say that they guarantee that they are so mighty that they deserve a holiday when the country's in such a state. You're on £81,000 a year, man. Catch yourselves on.
I love it.
Sean, you haven't let us down. Thank you very much indeed.
Sean, can I just ask you, would you be happy if we took 2 weeks off?
I'd be happy if you got a pay cut and give it to the NHS.
Well, that's a fair point if you think we're overpaid. But whatever we're paid, do you think that we deserve, like everybody else in society?
No, you don't deserve it, mate. You should be on £26,000 a year like the NHS staff, not 81,000. You want to catch yourselves on.
Do you not think, though, Sean, that if all the MPs don't have a holiday, that they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, which it sounds as though that's what you want them to do, they'd be knackered, wouldn't they? And knackered people don't make good decisions.
Knackered, sitting on their backside.
Well, they don't.
Well, I sit on my backside, but I'll tell you what, 3 hours doing this show, talking to you, Sean, I feel quite tired afterwards.
Sean, can I say something? Sean, who's your member of Parliament?
He's a Tory. I don't know his name.
Richard Holden is his name.
I can't stand Tories.
Okay, right. Okay, well, I don't quite know what to say now, but I can assure you that
speaking as a recovering Tory.
Yeah, Richard Holden is a new MP. And I've forgotten, and Barry will remind me who his predecessor would have been.
Laura Pidcock.
In any event. Oh, God, yeah, Laura Pidcock. What happened? Anyway, let's move quick. But Sean, there's a really serious point here, Sean. And that is that, I mean, I'm no longer a member of Parliament, but I can tell you, I used to work in telly. I used to be a criminal barrister. I have never worked as hard as when I was a member of Parliament. And you work really hard. And it's not sitting around in Westminster where you do the really hard work. The really hard work is when you work for your constituents. And that is something that you never really hear about, but it's an absolute fact. And I say that as somebody who did it. I mean, that was one of the things I enjoyed most of all about being an MP, is helping your constituents. And you obviously have never needed any help.
Why don't you put Johnson in prison then if you're a criminal? Why don't you put him in prison through all the deaths that he's done?
Well, you do actually have to have committed a criminal act before you put in prison.
You might be right there. I think this is something we should take offline.
Well, Sean, you've pulled. Well done. It's 8:46.
This is LBC.
Gardiner, Anna Soubry, Oz Katerji and Albie Amankona with me taking your calls. Let's go to Eddie in Barrow-in-Furness. Hello, Eddie.
Good evening. I'd like to ask the panellists a straightforward question. What do they think of this new law they're bringing out that's going to protect women when the police forces up and down the country, it's common knowledge, can't enforce the laws they've already got in place at the moment for things like disability hate crime, racial hate crime?
OK, let's go to Oz first.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think... I mean, I don't live outside of London, so I can't tell you, more how regional police departments are handling things. But the Metropolitan Police have had a shocker recently. Dame Cressida Dick has had a shocker recently with the Sarah Everard case and the awful scenes from that vigil. I think there is a real problem with policing in this country. Not that I think the police are the problem, but I think there are structural, big structural problems within the police force that need seriously addressing. And I don't think Dame Cressida Dick has the answer to them, to be honest with you. And, again, I can't talk about other police forces because I haven't paid as much attention to them. But if the Metropolitan Police is having this bad a time, then I presume the lesser funded ones are probably struggling too.
Anna Soubry, this bill that's going through Parliament on particularly women's safety, a lot of campaigners say it's good, but it doesn't go far enough. I can't say it's a subject I'm a great expert on. Is it something that is progress, or do you think it does need to go further?
I think it is. I think it is. And look, let's be honest about it. It's building on some great work that was done by the Labour government, then the Conservative government then built on that, and now we have this bill. And so it is a step forward, and rightly so. I know that when I was a member of Parliament, and my old home county of Nottinghamshire, we had a chief constable who happened to be a woman, who decided that the police needed to do more about the sort of every day or every evening nonsensical, unpleasant abuse that too many women have to put up with, and which is no longer acceptable. And so whilst I'm a bit odd, perhaps, that I have difficulty in saying that if a man says something that is offensive, it's necessarily a hate crime, because I'm not sure as an old lawyer that we have the right definition of hate. But in any event, it is offensive, it's unacceptable. And in Nottinghamshire was one of the places that ran that as a pilot with great success, actually. And so I think we are making the step in the right direction. The police, we know we don't have enough police officers, and I again put my hands up to that. And it's good to see that this Conservative government is redressing that. They've always had to prioritise. They've always, under whatever colour of government, it's work. And I think that this shift in emphasis now to making sure that women can go about their lives in a way that men do without a second thought. But for us as women, we just don't have that freedom. Redressing that so that we can have a life that's the same as yours must be for the good.
I'm 59. If you want to call me a boy, that's fine by me. Albie.
I think we're all going to be in agreement on this, and sadly, I think until there is full parity of the sexes, there will always be further to go with legislation, and I'm very confident of that. I grew up with a single mother and two sisters. I've seen firsthand the harassment that my two beautiful young sisters get, even when they're out with me. And it's horrific. And I do think that the thin end of the wedge are things like wolf whistling and catcalling, and the thick end of the wedge is what's happened to Sarah Everard and the Smallman sisters. And it needs to be rooted out of our society. And those who harass women because they're women need to feel the full force of the law.
So just tell us what happens when your sisters are out with you.
So we were walking back from the gym on a Friday night just down the road from us, and I was with both of my sisters, and there is a bar very close to the gym which is near our house, and there were lots of men outside, and about 5 of them started following us down the road, wolf whistling at my sisters, catcalling. I politely asked them to stop. I firmly asked them to stop. They didn't stop. And it wasn't until we crossed the road that they eventually decided, well, actually, I'm going to give up on this because it's just not going to happen. And I have to say, the way that some young men treat women is shocking. And I've been seeing it since I was at school. And I don't think it's gotten any better, Ian. So we need to be educating our young men to treat women with the respect that they deserve. And also, I think we need the legislation to back it up.
I mean, Anna, you famously got abused in the streets during all the Brexit. In fact, coming into this building that we're in now on Millbank. Do you think that you would have had that treatment if you hadn't been a woman?
I think the fact that I was a woman made them think that I was more... They could bully me, they could harass me more easily because they could intimidate me. Because I'm from their perspective, women are easier targets than men. As you and I think everybody in the studio knows, we women are just as resilient as men, if not more so. But, I mean, I've been really... The Sarah Everard, this terrible rape and murder, really hit many of us. My daughters are the same age. One of them lives in the same area of London where Sarah had walked that night. And my girls told me, they're 30 and 31, and you might imagine they're pretty scary. They're great young women. But when they told me some of the stuff that they have to put up with, as Albie was describing, going out for a run and having idiots leering out the car and all the rest of it, it's unacceptable. And we're fed up with it. And if it means we have to pass a law and get our police to stop people and prosecute them to stop it, then that's what has to be done, because we're fed up to the back teeth with it.
Barry.
Yeah, look, I agree, of course, with all of that. I actually thought Dead Ringers got it spot on. I don't know if you heard, but they compared in only the way that those comedians can, the way in which the police dealt with those who were trying to break into the Euro finals, and how they stood back and basically let them in. And then they said, but of course, if it had been a peaceful vigil for a woman who had been, brutally murdered, then we'd have gone in with our truncheons and our batons. I mean, I do not understand what happened on that occasion, and I don't think a proper explanation of it has been given by the police, and it needs to be.
Should be resignations.
But they've got to the point, and I'm talking about the Metropolitan Police here rather than any other police force, but they've got to the point where they issue statements where they're calling black white, where they say, we did a brilliant job at Wembley. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I was there. I saw the job that you did. You weren't even present. And yet the senior police officer comes out and says, no, we have no questions to answer here. We did the job.
But look, this is something that I think all PR departments have been seized of. You go out there and you say, it was all fine. That's the government's approach. Everything's fine. We're in charge. Everything's going well. And it's not just the government that's doing it. As you say, the Met does it. Organisations are giving alternative facts and thinking they can get away with it. And that's why it's important that there is real scrutiny, real transparency of what's going on. But I want to go back to the question, because everyone in our society should be able to feel confident that they go about their daily life without harassment. Now, does it really take an act of Parliament for that to sink in to our population? And I think what Albie said about education is really fundamental here. And some of the schools that I'm working with in Brent are actually restructuring the way in which they engage with young men and women right from an early age, so that this is clearly unacceptable. The sort of harassment that is going on in school, the sexual harassment of girls that goes on in school, and has actually become normalised. And so it's really important that re-education process starts from the bottom up, and that everyone in our country feels that they can go about their business without that sort of harassment.
Just quickly, Oz, do you find that, like Albie, that maybe female friends of yours, female family members, are experiencing this kind of thing on a routine basis?
I would go a lot further. I think nearly every woman in this country has experienced, quite a serious form of sexual harassment at some point in their life. And I think the problem is it's a crisis of masculinity. I think, Barry hits on the point that we need to be teaching young men this from an early age. And, male fury, male entitlement, these are things that an act of Parliament in and of itself is not going to fix, and I think we need to be bolder and braver as a society to start talking about, actually, the problem is male violence, and men.
It is.
Men are the people that are behind this, and it's men that need to be told to stop in the most bold terms possible. It's a crisis of masculinity.
Eddie, thank you for a really good question. Final text question from Kate in Barnsley. If Liverpool can't be a World Heritage Site anymore, what would your nomination be? For those who weren't listening to the News Hour, if not, why not? You will know that Liverpool has been struck off the list, only the third place to be struck off in 50 years, because they don't like the Liverpool waterfront, which I think is fantastic. Anna Soubry, what would your nomination be for a World Heritage Site?
Well, obviously I should say Nottingham, because it's the city which I've spent most of my life in. But actually, I'm going to say, in all seriousness, Lincoln. As it happens, it's the city I was born in, because my mother worked in the hospital there. But Lincoln is, I don't know, Iain, the last time you went to Lincoln.
Well, I can tell you the last time I went to Lincoln.
It's a magnificent city. The Minster is stunning.
I was visiting a friend in Lincoln Prison, but let's not go there. Barry Gardiner.
I'm just interested to know that Anna's next standing in the constituency of Lincoln. She's trying to get the punters on side already. Well done, Anna.
I don't think so.
Okay, what's your nomination?
Oh, gosh. I've obviously got to say it would be Wembley.
I thought you were going to say Brent Cross Shopping Centre for a moment.
It would be Wembley. This is the spot in the world that all people who love football and play football most want to play.
Okay.
They want to be in Wembley. They have dreams of being in Wembley.
Oz was giving you a salute there.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure how many fingers he was using.
So it's the Wembley salute.
3.
But no,
that was a Wembley. Oh, right.
Born and raised, you see, I'm a Brent boy. I went to the same school as Raheem Sterling, so I'm incredibly proud of Wembley. But I have to give you a very different answer. It's one that's personal to me. I think Slimelight, it's a goth club. It's the longest running goth club in the world. It's in London. It's been going since the 80s. The founder, Mac, he sadly passed away last year. Really suddenly. I just think it's a wonderful community that exists in London. We have things like Camden Lock, just things that are unique about London that don't exist anywhere else in the world, and I think we should celebrate them. So Slimelight for me in Angel, it's the best goth club in the world. Go check it out.
And next time you come on Cross Question, you will be dressed as a goth.
Oh, definitely.
Anna, you're looking a bit perplexed by this.
No, I'm not going to a goth club, that's for sure.
Come on, Anna, come on. The invite's open. I'll take the glow sticks. We'll have a great time.
You've pulled twice now.
I know, I pulled twice.
Sean in concert.
God, I'm being
Try
serious
anything
about
once.
Lincoln, actually. Lincoln could
Oh,
be-
no, okay, no, we've had enough about Lincoln. Albie.
And the prison.
What?
Been there.
Well, my mum's from Manchester, so if it's not Liverpool, it's got to be Manchester. And I'm really upset that it's not Manchester in the first place, to be honest.
Controversial. Jackie
Well
Smith might have
said.
something to say about that on the For the Many podcast this weekend, because she never, ever accepts that Manchester has surpassed Birmingham as Britain's second
Oh, it most certainly
definitely has.
Oh,
This is
that's a question.
cool.
That is a question for
Absolutely.
another night. Oz, Katerji, Anna Soubry, Lincoln, obviously Britain's second city. Barry Gardiner, Albie, Amankona. Thank you very much for joining us on Cross Question. If you missed any of it, you can catch up on the podcast or on the Global Player. We're going to be talking about the 3% pay rise for the NHS in just a moment. Getting more of your views. It's 9:03.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock. The Royal College of Nursing says a 3% pay rise for NHS staff in England and Wales is shambolic. Paramedics, consultants, dentists and salaried GPs will also get the increase, which is backdated to April. It was announced by Health Secretary Sajid